Welcome to Sporting Goals, the BTech Sport and Exercise Science webinar series, supporting educators and learners to maximise the value of their BTech qualifications during and beyond study. In this episode, you will meet your subject advisor. You will get to know them, find out more about the subject advisor role and how that can support you and your centres. We will consider some frequently asked questions within the sector. And also, we will cite some wider support for your BTech qualifications. So I'm delighted to welcome our guest today, Penny Lewis, who is our subject advisor for Sport and Exercise Science. And my name is Gareth Reynolds, the sector manager for Sport and Exercise Science. So welcome, Penny.
Thank you. Welcome.
It's great to have you here today on Sporting Goals webinar. And I think it's a really good opportunity for our customers, lecturers, tutors, teachers, anyone involved with the BTech qualifications, really just to meet the person that maybe they've heard of, they've seen the picture of, they've had the updates from, and obviously all the support that you've offered the sector within the BTechs. And it'd just be great to sort of have a conversation with you and to share a bit of insight with them. So first of all, I think it'd be really useful to understand your passion and your insight for sport. How is it that you've come about to be involved within the sports sector?
Yes, I've always been really passionate about sport. Before I joined Pearson, I taught 14 to 19-year-olds. So I've had experience of teaching in the classroom, GCSE, A-level and BTech in sport. My background, I qualified as a PE teacher, I played hockey, and I continue to coach hockey, and I also manage a junior cricket team. I absolutely love watching any sport, whether it's live, whether it's on TV or listening on the radio. And I mean, this summer has been sort of amazing watching the Olympics and seeing all the athletes perform, and just they're so inspirational. And I really hope that I can be inspirational to teachers to want to get their learners to follow footsteps in sport and physical activity.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'm sure in terms of lots of those things you share there about sport and your passion for it will resonate with a lot of the listeners. And I think also importantly, in terms of the BTech qualifications, the people that contact you understanding that you have that insight and that empathy within the sector. That there's several of us that work within the wider team, and knowing what it's like being in centre. Obviously, the last couple of years have been a real unprecedented challenge that lots of us can't even begin to think of the impact that's had on people and how they've managed through. But I think what we've really tried to do is support centres during that time. I think what I'd like to share with listeners is what does it mean to be a subject advisor? I know that that's really hugely widely encompassing, but what does that mean on a sort of day-to-day?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Gareth, that one of my great things is I have been in a school, and I do have empathy with the teachers, and certainly they've done an amazing job over the last 18 months with COVID and continue with the learning. But sort of on a day-to-day basis, really, I want my role to be sort of the go-to person for PE and sports teachers, so that if they've got a problem or they've got an issue with the teaching and learning or assessment of any of the qualifications that we manage, the BTECs from the introductory up to the BTech Nationals and GCSE and A-level, so that they can come to me, and that I hopefully build a relationship with those teachers, and that we have a lot of trust, so that they trust me, that I'm going to give them accurate, up-to-date, honest information. And one of the things that I've learned certainly over the last few years is it's really important for me to listen to teachers, to find out what's going on in schools, what's going well, what improvements can be made. And I want to be that voice of the PE teachers for Pearson, so that any queries, any issues or anything, I can then bring back into Pearson and sort of discuss if any changes can be made. Of course, I have to put a little caveat that not all requests from teachers can be implemented, but at least their views are being heard within Pearson. And I always welcome feedback from teachers, positive and negative, because so that I can actually get a feel and an understanding as to what is going on within the schools and what needs to be addressed, really. So yeah, so on a day-to-day basis, I think sort of my view, my job really is to listen to teachers and then bring them back into Pearson and work with various teams within Pearson, from working with yourself as a sector manager, with assessment, with training, so that whatever the teachers need, we can then support them in a variety of ways.
Yeah, that's great. And what I can say from my role is that is exactly how it works, and having that voice that you're able to disseminate to the wider team and to myself and get a real understanding. And as you say, there may be some things that actually, in terms of what the sector is saying, that doesn't work, or it does work, but we can go back and support them and make sure, whether it's guidance or it's training, clarity, just that support that they need moving forward. I think one of the things that might be nice to highlight is, obviously over the last year, if you like, there's been so many sort of webinars and sessions and different things that you've put on. Can you give us a bit of a taste and a feel of some of the things you've been doing over the last year within the role?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this last 18 months has been unprecedented. It's been so challenging. There's been changes being made very quickly from the government, okay, in schools, etc. So I've really tried my best to keep teachers up to date, to give them the information. And whether I've been posting, sending out an update to everyone on the mailing list, or I've set up lots of go-to sessions. So really, to keep people up to date without them having to trawl through the website or finding the information themselves, I've really tried to provide that information in a very small, short, succinct way. And I've set up many go-to sessions over the last year, which teachers have attended, and I hope they found it helpful, because I haven't given them lots and lots of information, but information that they really need to know. Many teachers contact me in a variety of ways, and I always try and reply to them, however they contact me, whether it's Twitter, email, communities, very quickly, sort of probably within sort of 2 days at the longest. Or many teachers sort of do ask for callbacks at times when it's convenient for them, when they're not teaching, and I will always endeavour to try and call them back at an agreed time, to support them in any way that I can. And I hope that over the last year I have supported the teachers.
Yeah, and joining you in those sessions, there's been lots of opportunity for people to ask those questions and gain that clarity. And I think one of the things also for us to sort of think about is that moving forward, I think we've learned from that as a sector perspective as well. And I think we'll be looking to deliver those sort of ongoing sessions, just to give concurrent updates. That they may be very small things, they may be large things, but really just to give that touch point for deliverers and lecturers to have an understanding of what's happening and be able to ask those questions concurrently throughout the year to support them.
Absolutely. I mean, that is one of the things that over the next year, I think I've learned from last year, is the importance to continually have those communication platforms, so that I can set up some go-to sessions and people can attend, they can ask questions, okay, so that they really feel as though they are in contact with the exam board, so that they're up to date and they're delivering and assessing and doing the right things. Right.
Great. So we've touched on this slightly as we've already spoken, but I think obviously you being that go-to for the subject, but there are obviously things that are outside of your reach, your domain, your remit, and it's an understanding for centres to know that actually you can be the conduit for them and working with that wider team. So are you able to share maybe some of the channels that they could use, both via yourself, but also wider than that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people, teachers often know that they can contact me via the email address, teachingpandsport@pearson.com. They can contact me via the portal, where they send a query, put in a query, and it normally comes into either myself or my team that I work with. We also have communities where people can post questions that is for everyone to see, because often if an individual teacher has a question, it could be a generic question that many people could benefit from. We also have Twitter, okay, where I try and post things. If there's been very latest updates, I post on Twitter, okay. And in addition to the direct information contact to me, we also have Ask the Expert, okay. And I work with the team of senior verifiers who are the experts in individual qualifications, and you can always ask a question and it comes into my team. And if I feel as though the lead standard verifier is the most appropriate, then I'll forward that information onto the relevant person so that they can answer that question, so that you get the most accurate, up-to-date information. We also have the assignment check-in service, which I think everyone is probably familiar with, where you can submit your assignment brief. And again, we have a team that works very closely to make sure that you're meeting the requirements of the relevant specification. So there's lots of different channels, and we know that different people like to communicate in different ways, and so we provide as many channels as possible. But the one thing that if a query comes in from, say, the portal and I can't answer it, then that I will then pass the information on to the teams that I work with, which could be the training team if a teacher wants some very specific training, okay. It could be the training team, it could be the assessment team, it could be yourself, Gareth. If there's a query about the development of qualifications, I often forward some information to you. We have quality nominees that are all about the standards verification process, just to name a few. So although there are different channels, they can come in, but if I'm not the right person, then I will liaise with the wider team within Pearson.
Yeah, and I think that's a really relevant point, that there are lots of different channels for different individuals in centres as well, from, as you say, QNs, maybe senior leaders. They may come through the portal, but actually if it's a question for our sector, it will find its way to yourself, and then you'll disseminate it to the appropriate person. So it's important that people use whichever channel they feel is most appropriate for them, they're most comfortable with, but they will get what they need. And it might be that there's a guide that's very clear, there's something that we can send across quite quickly, or it might be actually we do need to speak to the specialist within the centre around the qualification, or we do need to speak to our subject lead or our chief examiner. So we really encourage those questions to ensure that we can give both yourself as centres and also the learners the clarity that they need moving forward. I think a nice example might be, Penny, thinking about as a centre, maybe with a previous hat on working in centre, maybe starting a new BTech qualification, or actually being a newly qualified teacher, or being a manager of a newly qualified teacher, but not having the capacity to maybe to support around, okay, your introduction to BTech. What are the sort of things that maybe you can do in your role to support that?
Absolutely. And I often get teachers that phone up, and they may either be new to BTech, or new to teaching, or they might have somebody in their team that's new to teaching. And I totally understand that it can be really quite daunting delivering a BTech qualification for the first time, or a new BTech qualification, whichever the situation. So I often get calls, and then I'll set up maybe a team or a Zoom meeting with that individual, and we can go through the specification, things to look out for, the importance of what the structure of a BTech is, okay, and how the assessment works, about the importance of meeting the requirements of the assessment criteria, but delivering the content, but then how the assessment works. And then sort of maybe briefly going into the quality assurance process. But a really good example is where I work with another team within Pearson, is obviously I know and understand the quality assurance process, but we have the quality nominees, and they follow they are the experts within that area. And I often will show new teachers the website where all the support is, okay, and there's lots of courses for internal verifiers, for lead internal verifiers, for quality nominees, okay, and that's sort of passing information that I have onto the teacher so that they can really be well prepared for the assessment and the delivery and assessment of those qualifications. And so it's just helping people navigate not only the website, the specification, the assessment, the quality assurance, etc. So I've set up many individual sessions with individual teachers just to give them a start and to have that positive experience of delivering and assessing a BTech course.
Yeah, that's really helpful, and I think that sort of helps the understanding of centres as well. And I think that signposting is as valuable. You know, for example, we've recently done a pre-record for Unit E for guidance for the research project on the 2019s, and actually it might be that there's some initial work done around I'm new to BTech and I'm picking up Unit E, and then that pre-record can be shared with them. So I think that's really valuable for them to understand what's there and how they can use it. So in terms of the next section, Penny, obviously we speak regularly, and there are often lots of frequently asked questions, and we could spend much more than a bite-sized element on this, but we've just picked out a couple of areas that we thought might be useful in terms of listeners, whilst they're listening to this webinar or watching this webinar, of just getting an understanding of some of these things that often come up. So one of the first things that we discussed that we thought would be of value was content versus assessment.
Absolutely, and that's one of the most frequently asked questions. What content needs to be taught and what assessment. Does all the content have to be assessed? Well, the answer is actually no, it doesn't. Okay, every learner, they must have an opportunity within the delivery of the unit to cover all the unit content. So in every BTech specification, there is content, and everything within that content must be taught, so that the learner has a real understanding of that unit. They develop their knowledge and understanding and application of that unit. But not everything needs to be assessed. And one of the most common things that I have is in the BTech First Award, centres that do the leadership unit. I think there's something like 32 different qualities, characteristics of a leader. And teachers say, do we have to put every characteristic in an assessment? Okay, well, no, they don't. But if you write the assignment, so that learners think of a leader, okay, and they have to either describe, explain, analyze a leader, you know, if they can visualize someone, they will probably bring in most of the characteristics. Someone who is well organized, someone who knows their subject, someone who is approachable, etc., without actually just doing a tick list of I've covered this, I've ticked this, I've ticked this, I've covered this from the content. So it's really important that the learners have covered the content, all the content, unless it's got an EG. And if it's an EG, if there's anything followed by an EG, that's the whole purpose. It is just an example, okay? And you can use your own examples in those situations, but you must have covered all the content, but not everything in the content needs to be assessed. But the assessment must be an opportunity for the learners to show their knowledge and understanding of what has been taught. So, and you know, sometimes a more able learner will be able to pick out the most relevant things and analyze it or evaluate it, whatever the assessment criteria is, in a very succinct way. So sometimes a more able learner may produce an assignment that is shorter than maybe a less able learner who isn't quite sure and so puts lots of things in. So it is content v assessment, but you've got to make sure that there is enough in that assessment to show their knowledge and understanding, and that they must meet the requirements of the assessment criteria. The only time when everything would need to be in is if in the assessment it clearly says that you have to use 3 examples, 7 examples or something, or all content needs to be covered. But I don't think in the 2016 or 2019 qualifications that is expected. It used to be in the old 2010. There was an area that they had to mention every, I think it was every bone in the body, okay, but that's no longer a requirement.
Yeah, and I think that's really helpful, that overview. And I think in terms of content, often people say, well, e.g., we'd like to use this because this is in our local context. Well, of course, in the e.g., use that, and that's going to resonate with learners and they're going to buy into that as well. Obviously, if learners have covered all of the content in their learning, which they are required to do, as Penny has said there, they can unpick and then apply that appropriately to their assessment. And it's about that use of that knowledge and being able to apply that. And that leads us on really onto the next point we wanted to cover, Penny, thinking about applying learning. BTEC qualification for learners, the skills, the knowledge, the behaviour. So what is it that we're saying here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the BTEC qualifications, they are vocational. One of the things that we really want to do is learners often learn from seeing or doing, and actually really applying their learners. And I know sometimes it's very difficult. They have to be in a classroom and that's the only resource that you might have. But the whole purpose of BTEC is it is a practical, it is about the vocation, and wherever possible, I would always encourage any of the theory to be delivered in a practical way. Can you get guest speakers? Now, I know people are not allowed in schools at the moment, and that's very difficult, but it might be to an advantage in the fact that everybody's used to either Teams or Zoom, and people may be able to come and support you via a Teams or Zoom session rather than them having to travel. So I would always try and encourage teachers to deliver the theory in a practical way. You know, any like fitness test, get them to do the fitness test. Any methods of training, get them to do different methods of training. Or just a couple of examples. If you're talking about different employers, try and get people from those areas to give a talk about their experience in that industry, or I mean, use people who have left the college a few years prior. Okay, could they come back and talk about what they're doing if they're in that sort of in an appropriate job? So it's about really trying to apply apply their learning so that learners will really understand what they've done. And I think one example is in the BTEC First Award in the Principles of Personal Training component 3, applying the principles of personal training. You know, it's not just about designing, carrying out and reviewing a programme in order to pass the course. Actually, you know, designing and carrying out and reviewing a personal fitness programme or personal training programme is a life skill, okay? Everyone should be carrying out regular fitness when they're older, for physical health and mental health. So I think it's really important that we don't get bogged down too much about just, cover the specification. Actually, what is it that we're trying to do? And that's a really good example where, you know, over lockdown, when people were at home, they didn't have access to the gym, but they can still do a fitness program. You know, they don't need much space, they don't need much equipment. There was many sessions on Zoom of people doing workouts, people doing Pilates fitness programs. Joe Wicks was a prime example, okay, just in his sitting room. So the part of the BTEC First is really being able to develop lifelong skills, and I think that's a really good example of actually applying their learning, okay, in a situation that will really help them going forward throughout their life.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, both for individuals that go on to be involved in the sports industry, that they're going to be applying these things and using these things, but also in terms of transitional or things that translate to other areas, well-being, health and exercise are there throughout whatever sector you go into, because this is about your life as an individual and your own sort of personal development and wellness. I think also thinking about level 3, that opportunity for learners to experience and do, so that they can make an informed position. Thinking historically from being in centres, learners saying to me, well, I quite like the idea of being in sports development and organising events, and then they come to organise an event and they think, oh, that was pretty tough, and those people didn't turn up and they let me down there, and that was really difficult. And then sometimes it's as useful to close a door as to open a door. And then on the flip side, they would have been introduced to sports psychology and thought, you know what, this is really interesting, and yeah, I want to take this further. But learners need to be able to undertake those experiences and engage with it and feel it and get a real sense of it to know how to inform their next steps, whether that's into apprenticeship, whether that's into employment, or onto HE. So I think that's really important. And another area I just wanted to touch on there as well was around assessment methods. Often within the specification, we may give an example of an assessment method that can be used. However, there's a whole breadth of assessment methods that can be used in BTech. And going back to that point that Penny's just made there, we really want people to apply it. So think about the range of assessment that we're undertaking. Within sports coaching, are they delivering a verbal presentation? Are they delivering a practical session and giving one-to-one feedback or having a group discussion? Because in terms of the role that they're going to be undertaking in the future, or the skills that they take forward, it's not just going to be about writing reports, and it's not just going to be about leading practical sessions. There's a whole remit and range of skills that we want to put them in so they can learn and develop and be able to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding. So for example, the 2019 spec has an appendix which gives a range of assessment methods that could be used. And then it's for the practitioners in centres to think, okay, a learner's able to demonstrate their evidence by using this method, and that may be a discussion with peers in centre, may be an opportunity to use the assignment checking service that we'll go on to in a moment. I think another thing for me to flag is around individuals and centres signing up, Penny, for updates, because I think that's really critical, and I know that they can do that with yourself.
Absolutely. I have there's a database on the website. You can sign up for updates, and I try and send updates a minimum of once a month. Okay, but obviously if there's some news or something coming up that's happening quite quickly, I'll send another update. And again, it's really just to make sure I try and preempt what teachers will need to know. So for example, in the 2016 specifications, the exams for January, the deadline is usually early October. So I'll send out an update saying, don't forget, if you're intending your learners to sit the exams in January, then this is the deadline for the entries. So just things like that, really. And please, if anyone isn't signed up, then go onto the website and you can sign up for my regular updates. And also it's on there where I sort of also promote any support sessions, any GoToZoom, Teams support sessions, again, which people can sign up for, and they are all free.
Great. And I know that practitioners have found them really useful, particularly, I've been able to engage with them over the last year and get an understanding how useful they've found them. But those updates in year are really useful. And if it just lands in someone's inbox, that's really helpful for them. But what we need them to do, obviously, is go and sign up to those. What I've put up on the screen here, and if you're listening, really what this is I've put a number of different support mechanisms beyond those that are already covered. And I think it's critical that people firstly are aware of them. Some people will be aware, some will not. So the purpose, first of all, is just to flag them, to say, are you aware of these things? You could use them, and these are what they're for. You don't need to use them, but they may bring value and support you in your centre. So I think, Penny, if we just sort of move around them and we state which one we're looking at for people that are listening, I think that would be really helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah, the assignment checking service, lots of teachers use them. It's a free service, and I need to make sure everyone is aware it's not mandatory. But if you have written your own assignment brief and you're not sure, is that right? Okay, is it appropriate? Then you can submit it to the assignment checking service free of charge, and you'll get some feedback from the team about the assignment. But of course, you know, you need to make sure that you then internally verify it. Even though you've had feedback, you must internally verify it to make sure that it is fit for purpose within your individual centre. I often get asked, because we do have authorised assignment briefs, and sometimes teachers just want to change one word, or say instead of written, submit it in a written format, they want to present it, and they say, oh, should I send it to the assignment checking service? That's not required, because obviously the assessment you can do however you want to do it. It's really if you're creating your own, or you've really amended the authorised assignment brief, but it's free of charge, okay, and you can submit as many as you want. Then
sorry, Penny, just on that, I think particularly centres that have moved from QCF to RQF. RQF is very different in terms of the way the assignments are structured, and even our most experienced practitioners, I would recommend utilising that service, because as Penny has said, that feedback that can transcend into all other assignments that you write. You'll be able to use that feedback. So I would encourage centres to use that, particularly if they're thinking, okay, now we're going to start developing our own RQF, whether that's 2016 or the 2019, and this is in relation to level 3. Please do utilize that service, because then there may be a little nugget you take from that and think, actually, that's really useful. I'll use that myself as a practitioner, or if you're in a wider team, you may disseminate that across. Thank you, Penny.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, it's a free service. Use it if you want to. Just then going on to My BTech, and I know there are many centres that use My BTech. It is My BTech is a software that has been produced by Pearson, and really it supports the administration of the BTech qualifications. I must say it does take some time to set it up, but once you've set it up, then everything, all the administration will be in place, and it will help with your course planning. It'll make sure that you've selected the appropriate combinations of units, so you don't come to the end of the course and having realised that you've actually delivered the wrong unit, so it will stop that. It will also store all the IV forms, so they're all in one place, so you don't have to print them out and your IV to sign them or to make comments and pass them back. They'll all be on My BTech, and it'll track progress for the learners. So it's a really useful tool, okay, and I know centres that have invested the time in setting it up find that it's really helpful, okay, and useful. So that's My BTech.
Great, thank you. What I would say on that as well is that often centres that are new to BTech, that might be a really nice way to start in terms of structure. Lots of experienced centres don't tend to use it because they've already got their processes in place. So as Penny says, you do need that time at the start to put it into place, but once it's there, it's a really valuable tool if that's something you're looking to utilize.
Yeah. And then moving on to Edexcel Online. Edexcel Online is essential that every teacher has a username and password to get onto Edexcel Online, because everything is on Edexcel Online, from your registrations for your learners, anything that is padlocked on the website, you need to have an Edexcel Online account to open it. And that goes from the 2019, if you're delivering 2019, the research project. In order to access the theme, you need to have a password. Okay, if you're delivering a username and password, an Edexcel Online account. If you're delivering the 2016 qualifications and you've got learners sitting the external assessment and the tasks, then part A is released on the website, but again under padlock, and you need to have an Edexcel Online account in order to open it. In addition, all the latest question papers, mark schemes and examiners reports are all under padlock, okay, and the reason that is because many teachers want to use them as a mock, and so we want to make sure that only teachers can access them rather than the learners being able to access the most recent ones. So an Edexcel Online account is essential. If you have forgotten your username or your password or something, it is your examinations officer who manages those accounts. So if you haven't got an Edexcel Online account, please do get one, because you will need it throughout the academic year. Go to your exams officer, ask them, and they'll be able to set one up for you.
Yeah, and that's a nice tip, really, especially if you're delivering BTech for the first time and you've been given a BTech qualification for next academic year, for example. Yeah, speak to your exam officer, or in some senses, it might be your QN, your quality nominee. So then the next two, Penny, are specific to external assessment.
Yeah. Okay, Results Plus and Exam Wizard. And Results Plus has been around for a few years, okay, and honestly, it's a free service, and it's an online results analysis tool. So if your learners have sat one of the exams, it's not available for on-screen on demand. I have to put that out now, but it is available for the Tech Award and the BTech Nationals external assessment. So once the exams have taken place and you've got the results, then you can go and you can analyze, you can get a breakdown of your students' performance, and it's really helpful for staff development. So you could have a look, and it might be one area on the specification where your learners have done incredibly well, okay, and got really high marks on a particular section, okay, which is really positive for the teaching. On the other side, it could be that actually there's an area that the learners didn't perform particularly well, but as a team you could then say, well, actually this area learners are obviously struggling with. What can we do? How can we adapt our teaching, okay, or our resources, so that we can try and improve the marks on that particular section, so that they can improve the overall grade. It helps if a learner sort of didn't do very well, you could look at where they scored marks, and you could see where they need some individual support, okay, on different sections. It's an amazing service that we offer free of charge. You can see the actual scores for each question for each student or class or group. So one group may be performing better than the other. I wonder what are their reasons why, etc. And it also compares your class with classes from across the country of a similar background. So you can do comparisons, okay, you can look at individual students, you can look at your cohorts. It is a really efficient, effective service that we offer for you to help with your teaching and learning.
Yeah, and I think in terms of reviewing it, either at the end of the year as a department and maybe as a head of department, considering where different things maybe are on the teaching and learning plan, that actually something that you felt as a deliverer went well, but actually the results didn't go so well, or if there's something across your cohorts that isn't landing as well as you would expect, then maybe there's some joint ownership in the tutorial program or different people delivering across, just really gives that insight. But also importantly, at an individual level, if a learner has had a reset and they're so close, but they need that motivation to say, look, just on this element, you were 2 points off, and that element is the bit that you were off on both times. It really adds as that motivator and helps you guide them and support them moving forward.
Yes, and finally, Exam Wizard. An Exam Wizard is where you can build up an exam paper based on past questions, and you can give it to your learners. And it might be that you, within, say, the BTech Nationals 2016 spec, if you're looking at Unit 1, the anatomy and physiology, you may have delivered a component, the maybe musculoskeletal system, and you want to see how well they understand that individual topic area. And instead of giving them a whole paper where they won't know questions on the energy system or the cardiorespiratory system, you can just create your own question paper from past questions, and you can have questions on the musculoskeletal system if that's what you've just taught, and you can see how they're progressing and with their knowledge and understanding. And if you produce the questions, the mark scheme automatically comes, and the examiner's report automatically comes for those particular questions. So Exam Wizard is an amazing tool and will really help you in preparing for those external assessments, and can really help you have an understanding as to where the learners are with their knowledge and understanding of particular topics. So that's really good.
Yes, and I think in terms of checking learning, maybe after a block of learning, it's really useful. And as you say, you can pick out individual elements. And also this can be used quite organically as well. You know, a learner may ask a question around the exam and you think, actually, we've done some learning. couple of clicks in, you can get that question up in given 5-10 minutes to answer that question, and then they could peer assess by putting up the chief examiner's report on the board, or the mark scheme on the board, and then they're starting to get an understanding of those marks and those grades and how they would accrue them. So it does give you that flexibility, and also you can save, as Penny has said, you can save your sort of exams, your tests that you've built up, and you can use them within your teaching practice on year as well. So a really nice resource to use. Now, obviously, these are just a couple of things that we've shared. There are other things. Obviously, we have the paid for resources as well, the on-demand training, the pre-recorded complimentary training online, lots of different things for you to be able to utilize and support you. So I think we've covered quite a lot there in a short amount of time, Penny, and we could almost speak all day sort of sharing different elements to centres, but hopefully it's given them a bite-sized sort of overview of your role and some of the things of your day-to-day, and how we can support them and their learners moving forward.
Absolutely. I mean, sort of hopefully you've given we've given you teachers an insight as to what we do, how we work together within Pearson, and what we offer, what services we offer, what free services we offer as well. And just to give you a little bit of an insight, as you've just said, there are lots of other support systems that we offer. But if anybody wants to contact me, you can always contact me on the phone on 03330 164 100. The telephone number's on the screen now. Okay, or you can contact me via email, okay, or Twitter. Okay, so there's lots of communities. There's lots of ways in which you can communicate with me, and it's whichever way you prefer. You want to communicate with me, then I'll always endeavour to support you in any way I can throughout the academic year of delivering and assessing our qualifications.
Perfect. So thank you very much for your time. I'd just like to encourage listeners to share this with colleagues, and also sign up for the upcoming support sessions, and we look forward to seeing you there.